So good evening, good afternoon, good morning. I'm not sure where everyone is joining in from, but we're so glad you're here. We're so glad that you're taking the time to join us for something very special.
So, good evening, good afternoon, good
At this
morning.
moment,
Sure
we are
where everyone
launching
is
the
joining
brand
in
new
from.
book called Nigeria, The Mistake of 1914 by Professor Alex Anyikam. This book doesn't just revisit history, it challenges us to understand how the decisions were made over a century ago and to continue to shape the world that we live in, especially in the diaspora or even back home. I want to, and also I'm super excited about the opportunity of introducing the host who's going to carry the weight of the questions and have that conversation and dialogue with Professor Anyikam, and that will be Dr. Jeff Ohanaja. So with no further ado, I want to turn it over to him.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you for being here for this very important conversation on Nigeria, the mistake of 1914 by Professor Alex Anyikam. This is not a casual book, I want to remind you, honestly. And it does not make any casual comments. As a matter of fact, it's a work of historical indictment. I want you to let that one sink. It's a political interpretation and moral challenge. Across its chapters, from 1 to 8, the book asks whether the Nigerian state, as constituted in 1914, way back when, was built on a flawed foundation from which many later crises naturally flowed. The crisis of distrust, the crisis of massacre, the regional domination, the military intervention, and finally the ultimate, the Nigeria-Biafra war and the insecurities ravaging the whole of the country. It's a serious-minded interpretation of what our history has actually given to us. So our task tonight, tomorrow, this afternoon, whenever, is not merely to summarize the book. That's not what we're here for, but to probe its central claims in a way that brings the author's argument into sharper focus for all of us. That's why we are here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And so you brace yourselves ready for this academic exercise. Painful as it will be in terms of some of the discussions, but we are going to go into them without fear or favor. And so to be able to do this now, it is going to be significant for you to understand who the lead interpreter is in terms of this, our historical background. Alex Anyikam is a scholar, he's a teacher, he's a community builder, and he's a witness to history. A former professor of political science and geosystems who taught at San Jacinto College, Houston Community, and Alvin Community College, all in Texas. And he brings to his writing the rare combination of academic depth and lived experience, lived in a sense. And you mark that word lived because you are going to find out down the road the experience as part of those who actively participated in this tragic Nigeria-Biafra war. So it's a combination of academic depth and lived experience. As a veteran of the Nigeria-Biafra war, Professor Anyikam writes not as a distant commentator, really, but as an eyewitness whose personal experience on the battlefield gives moral weight and historical texture to his work. What makes him especially remarkable is the consistency and purpose of his literary voice. He has a unique literary voice, and you will come to hear from the names of some of the books he has published, the leaning towards a particular kind of perspective. From Uzi na Umu in 2022, a book he published, to the other one, the audacity of Igbo civilization in 2023, to the War Without Choice he published in 2025. Is a serial academic publisher, as a matter of fact. And now, this latest one that has brought us all together tonight, The Mistake of 1914, which was published in, actually, this 2026. So he has established himself as a serious and disciplined author committed to interrogating history, identity, and the Nigerian condition. So his work reflects not only scholarship, but courage. The courage to remember, the courage to analyze, and to tell difficult truths. So beyond the classroom and the page, Professor Anyikam has also distinguished himself through service to the community. He has been a founder, a patron, and a charter member of several important Igbo and diaspora organizations in the US, contributing to the preservation of heritage, the strengthening of our community, and the advancement of collective purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming a man of intellect, a man of service, a man of memory and conviction, the very author of Nigeria, The Mistake of 1914, Professor Alex Anyikam himself. Please, wherever you are, whatever you can do, put your hands together for the prof himself. It shall be well with you, my brother.
Thank you very much. I welcome all of you to this book launching, a historical moment, the moment of truth. I thank you for coming here to keep alive the historical background of our community, especially in terms of Nigeria, in terms of the war, in terms of crisis that had riddled Nigeria for a long time. So the book itself is a kind of record, a minimal record of personal experience and information that had been historical from time. Is a book that is a narrative that covers many centuries, and especially in terms of the issue of 1914, amalgamation of 1914, was a landmark period. First of all, it brought about a number of more than hundreds of people, hundreds of ethnic groups, and forced them in creation of a country that never existed, because most of these hundreds of nations were autonomous and independent before that. But the British colonial government brought them all together, irrespective of their differences, their languages, their religious belief, their mannerism. They put them together and just found a country called Nigeria, which never existed before and independent, January 1st, 1914. So that amalgamation of people without their consent, without their collaboration, without finding out how to manage them, without creating a sort of enabling environment for them to exist, is one of the things that just created a very big problem. And the dominant effect of that led to riot upon riots, massacre upon massacre, and ultimately led into Nigerian Biafra War, a war that claimed more than 3 million citizens, a war that brought the Nigerians against themselves. And the ultimate goal of 1914 was intended to create a sort of division between ethnic groups, because those ethnic groups never even had any relationship, never any linkage before that. And it looked like it was designed to create more confusion instead of putting things together. So we're going to look at that in this context, because of the brevity of time and because the book covers a lot of things, and because you're to give you a chance to know much about the book, about the history, about the war, about what constitutes this confusion in Nigeria. I will go ahead and give it a summary like this, and expect that you go ahead and find out those things that are very, very important for you to understand what is going on today. Because for you to understand what is going on today, you have to understand the history, and the history is embedded in that writing.
Professor, may I step in?
Thank you.
Okay. So, guys, Professor's jumped right into it right now. So, again, just want to remind you all that this is a book launch. So this whole purpose of this is also to give you a sample of what is in the book that Professor Alessandro Kama has written. If you look into the chat, there should be some information as well as some other information on the channel as it relates to how to get yourself a copy of this book. Again, I just want to thank you again for the privilege of joining this opportunity, joining the discussion. And I will turn it over to the esteemed Dr. Hanaja to let's start with the questions. And again, the questions are geared to kind of give you a sample of some of the information that's in the book. And at the same time, don't forget to grab a copy.
Okay, thank you so much. We are talking about 1914, and you're going to hear so much about 1914. So, Alex, your title is Bold and Unmistakable: Nigeria, the Mistake of 1914. So, but for many people, 1914 is simply remembered as the year of amalgamation. Whatever else that took place, really, that's all the short history and the knowledge we possess. But your argument goes much, much further than that to establish the foundation of our present crisis. So let me ask you plainly, what in the deepest sense was the mistake of 1914?
Thank you very much, Dr. Hanaja. The 1914 narrative is the centerpiece of this publication, because so many things happened, and so many things that happened because of structural defect, lack of good foundation, creating a sort of organization for a country really without formal consent of the people. It is said that they can drag a cow to the water, but they can't force it to drink. So bringing people who have different background, different ethnic group, different religious group, different lifestyle, and they expect that things will go well without adequate preparation, without the consent, without people accepting being together, is a kind of a chance that really will fail in most cases. So it's just like the 1914, it could be credited for all the problems in Nigeria have. Because first of all, it brought about people who really never even agree, never even knew they existed, even before 1914. And bound them into one forcefully, a creation that led into crisis, dishonesty, distrust, and a lot of problems. So up to the point that it began to continue to create a lot of problems. For example, in 1945, the crisis between the South and the North led into massacre in Jos, killed so many people because a minor thing, because of religious differences and because of the ways of doing things. And that led into So crisis that was supposed to be investigated by the commissioned officers by British colonial rule. But the commissioned officers just didn't do anything. They just looked at it and said, well, we are going to look into it and find out who is wrong and punish the person. But guess what? Nothing was done. They swept it under the rug. And the same thing happened in 1953, when there was a crisis in Kano. The same thing. And this thing built up, this unaddressed misunderstanding and the irreconcilable differences continue to mushroom until it led into the war, and which are going to talk into the details. And not only that, it's extended into the insecurity of today. So if you look at insecurity, they can trace it back to 1914. Because if 1914 had a good foundation, there couldn't be any problem. There couldn't be any type of crisis. But because of the wrong foundation and structural defect, they created all those things. And even people at this time, they still cannot nurture 1914 as an indivisible nature, the indivisible Nigeria, without even all those weaknesses and bad experiences. Time goes on, you hear much about that, and reading the book can even give you more. This is just a synopsis of what is in the book, but reading the book, you can get more information on that.
Okay, thank you very much. I can understand your explanation, but a lot of readers may have some different opinion. But why should a reader in the present believe that an event from more than a century ago still explains so much about contemporary Nigeria? I know you have mentioned some of the basic defaults really that may have persisted.
Well, let me use a very mundane kind of example of just, if somebody slapped your dad in 1914 and disgraced your dad woefully, I don't think you can forget that because it's 1914. There must be a sort of closure. Somebody has to come there and say, sorry, we know that thing was wrong. We have to correct it. Righting the wrong could even go a certain extent to solve the problem. But if something that was done that time and the mistake continued to recur each time, you definitely want to feel that, yes, as long as this is not addressed, the problem continues. And that is why the difference between the North and the South has no end until it is addressed. And nobody is talking about extension, but this is the main problem. Anybody who reads the book and anybody who understands the history and the context of 1914 will definitely know that this problem is not solved.
Thank you. I know there are actors really in this 1914. Wherever they are, whatever legacy they have left with us and which we inherited. One of the strengths of your book, and those who have the opportunity to get a copy and read will understand that it does not deal only in abstractions. You test your argument against the words and actions of major historical actors, Azikiwe, Balewa, Bello, Awolowo, Gowon, Ojukwu. So let me ask you, which of Nigeria's major leaders, in your judgment, came closest to genuinely believing in an inclusive Nigeria project, and which merely used the language of unity for strategic purposes?
Okay, that's another very important question, because you say in every 12, there will be Peter. Let me not talk of Judas now. Yes, the Nigerian political actors play different roles, but the one that you can say that had been very nationalistic, in spite of the defect of 1914, was Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, of all the leaders, including the Bafemi Awolowo and Ahmadu Bello, was a nationalist by all imaginations. Example, he formed the NP, he was one of the people who formed the NCNC with Herbert Macaulay. And the NCNC was Nigerian Congress of Nigerian Citizens, National Congress of Nigerian Citizens. It was a political party where they caters for every part of Nigeria. It was a nationalistic, nation-based political party. And it was to fight against the colonial masters in terms of to speed up the independence. Zik also was the founder of West African Pilot. West African Pilot went beyond Nigeria to West Africa. And it's the dream of somebody who really wants a united Nigeria. So he played that role, but when it came to who will be number one in Nigeria in 1960, the British government selected Tafawa Balewa. He didn't even worry. So he found that all along he had been working towards that peace. And then, even during the Biafran War, because he didn't want to Nigeria that he created, he supported, he pioneered to break. He switched even to Nigeria in a way to put Nigeria together. That weakened Biafra very much. So you can look at him as one of the only person who has played a very important role in getting things together, based on your question. And also, you find also that even up to today, that guy, the Zik had been in the forefront of one nation in that concept of one Nigeria. But as opposed to Tafawa Balewa, who saw the difference in Nigeria and never believed seriously that Nigeria cannot be one. If you look at his publication, his speech in 1948, where he said the Nigerians cannot come together and they cannot unite. It's in the book. If you look at it, you can see that. If you look at Ahmad Bello, in 1952, Ahmad Bello came with the idea that if you take a southerner and a northerner into a job, that Igbo man, after 1 year, Igbo man will emerge as a head. He said the Igbos were very ambitious. That is not a speech of somebody who wants to, who is a nationalistic. But the worst of that was with the publication at Sadona Sokoto's publication in 1961, when he made it clear he wanted one Nigeria, but one Nigeria at his own, on his own condition, where he will be the overall, under the Sultanate. And then, if you look at that in page 48 of the book, the middle of the book, you can read that. It's a nation called Nigeria should become the estate of his grandfather. He will never allow anybody to rule them, and will never let people to rule themselves. And that is found out in page 48. So if you look at it, the only person who stood out very much was Nnaji, but other people did not. Even Awolowo himself saw Nigeria as a geographical expression. So those are the things that, based on your question, the only person who was so nationalistic, who was good, was Nnaji, and that did not even help his people very much. And that's why people criticize him for the problems his people has.
So in other words, honestly, from your analysis, even those we call our forefathers never had a common purpose in terms of what the Nigeria they envisaged was going to be. Awolowo questioned whether Nigeria was truly a nation, and it's in the book. Bello insisted differently, that our differences must be understood, not ignored. Azikiwe warned against forced unity without real integration. Balewa acknowledged the depth of Nigeria's internal differences, not to even worry about Ojukwu that came later. He warned that structural collision could destroy the union. So together, all these reveal Nigeria entered into independence with a hope on the surface, but skepticism underneath. You even eloquently pointed out to that page, page 48 of the book. The new nation called Nigeria should be an estate of great father, our grandfather, Othman Danfelo. We must ruthlessly prevent change of power. We use the minorities in the north as willing tools and the south as conquered territory, and never allow them to rule over us, and never allow them to have control over their future. Ahmadu Bello, this was contained in My Life, published in 1962. So you can see the Nigerian project was dead on arrival. There was no unanimity in terms of purpose. So this is in the critique of One Nigeria in the book. The phrase is often used as if it were self-evident, beyond any debate. But your book treats it as a contested and even deceptive doctrine, One Nigeria. So help us understand this clearly. Are you rejecting unity itself, or are you rejecting a particular kind of unity? Unity without justice, unity without consent, and equal unity without citizenship, even knowing the foundation of our forefathers?
Yeah, I don't even reject unity. If unity is rooted on justice, on equal protection, and unity that gives merit to whoever deserves merit. I don't even believe in unity that takes in disguise, to dominate, to oppress, and to be partial. The unity will not be just a unity that people will just be proud of themselves and they based on the merit. But nothing justice, like I said before. So if Nigeria has, in a place that if you had a recruitment, assuming you have a recruitment to a certain position, I want people who are the best people to get the position, not people who really cannot even spell their name, cannot even calculate anything. So those things are the things, as you look at into admission into university institutions, you look at into the military, you do that different. We have to get the best cream of the crop, so that you don't have garbage in and garbage out. And that will help very much to progress the nation, because those are the things that we have to look into, because the idea that somebody is just selected and then because he's come from this place, because his father is this, because his mother is this, doesn't make sense. So we have to avoid all partialities and look at it as if just we have not, where you can elect and be elected, where you can travel to anywhere and feel free. If you don't meet all those things, the best thing you have to do is just either go into the sort of separation, or you go into like regionalization, because so that every region will automatically handle its own people. And then we have a sort of center that is just doesn't have too much power to compel you to do certain things. We need a sort of a country that, you know, that respect the rule of law, that had the electoral process, fair electoral process, not even people rigging himself into the to power, not even people who have dubious character, who have terrible background, you know, to use the means of money they have and other things, the influence they have to influence the judgment of the judiciary, or make the legislature subject to whatever they think, because they can do whatever they want to do. So those are the things. I don't reject that, but these are the things, the conditions under which any country can even thrive in this under these circumstances.
Yeah, because of time, I need to cover as much area in the book as possible. So I'm going to move forward to the ultimate area that is of a serious concern and continues to be, and that is on Biafra and the road to war. So that is the most important line in the book. Your argument that the Nigeria-Biafra war did not erupt suddenly is in the book, very well articulated, but it was the culmination of a long chain of accumulated tensions. So for the audience here tonight or this afternoon, what were the most decisive trends that, in your view, made the war increasingly likely? And was it recurring anti-Igbo violence, the constitutional imbalance, the resource politics, the military distortions, or the impunity, or all of these together and more?
Thank you very much for that. This is a long, is the kind of issue that I can start from the beginning of this 1914, even to the present. But that is not what we're going in for. But I can tell you that the synopsis is that Nigeria was built on false foundation. People at the first republic tried to manage it by having regions, so that regions will grow according to their pace. We have in the east and west that we have up to elementary school lead up to standard 6. In the north, they have up to standard 7. But there was a very big difference between the northern candidate and the southern candidate. Okay? So the problem there was started, let us give a run over. You can see that in the textbook. In 1962, when Awolowo was tried under treasonable felony and was in prison for 10 years. And the West started crisis from that time, from election to census to so many things. But the climax was in 1965. In 1965, there was election. That election was so brutal that people could even catch the opponent and spread the fuel on him and tie him up and burn him alive. They call it Operation Wait Here phenomenon. I was in the West throughout from 1960 to 1966. So I witnessed all those things. People, that was breakdown law and all over West. And the problem that happens in Nigeria, believe me, starts from the West. That is the place that people knew how the thuggery. So I don't want to go into the details in the book. So another thing again, that thing ever generated into that hostility, that person of brutality was so much that even the young officer felt that it was out of hand. he found that the federal government indirectly was sponsoring that crisis in attempt to take over the West. If you read the book, Adewale Ademoyoga is a Yoruba guy, one of the people who carried out the war, who planned the war, this January 15 war. He wrote a book called Why We Struck. It's in the book too. The guy said that this thing got too out of hand, that the young people said, why should they look and see this type of disorder and so many people killing? Then that thing pushed them into going to intervene. But before they intervened, they found that even Akintola and Ahmad Bello and Tafawa Balewa, they formed an alliance called NNA, National Nigerian Association Alliance. So what happened was that they formed this alliance, and then they planned to use the military officer at the 4th Brigade in Lagos, in Ibadan, to overthrow the government. These young people found it and preempted that. Okay, so, but it happened. So when this thing happened, then those things lead one to the other and climax up to the revenge, what they call revenge, which was just a sort of massacre. When the January 15 killed about the key components of the problem, there were about 8 people, but the July coup killed hundreds of people. So those things was gradually based on the foundation, the weak foundation, the inconsiderate behavior, considerate action of the colonial office to create all this, to build up Nigeria. Those things gradually led into domino effect in terms of from one crisis to the other and climax in the Nigerian Biafra War, in which Biafra was forced into it because they failed Aburi Conference. Aburi Conference was where the leaders, we read that, where they met and they agreed how to resolve the problem, but when they turned back, Gawon got some advice and they answered it and reneged on it. So those are the things that lead into that, and that the failure of Aburi Conference led into things that trended into war, and that is one of those things. That is how those things. That is why Aburi has how 1914 contributed to those instability that up to today, and nothing is done about to correct it. If it is not corrected, no way it will continue like that. And that is the extent of that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really, it's all very well articulated in the book, because the Western crisis combined everything that made the Federation combustible: party fragmentation, electoral fraud, emergency rule, violence in the streets, federal interference, repeated military deployment in domestic politics. And so your book argues that this destroyed faith in the democratic correction and made coup making thinkable. And the West is presented not as a side drama in the book, but as one of the laboratories of Nigerian collapse. And so how did we get into the coup that actually turned over everything on the road to Biafra?
I think a part of that when I was discussing, maybe because these things are all interconnected. If you look at the question, most of the questions are very much connected. The uncontrollable crisis of the West after the 1965 election, that was right there. So it led into some people were looking at some other fellow citizens burnt alive, screamed, burned their houses. Sometimes they killed their family, they burnt. So it was so horrible to the point that the young people said it would let this thing happen. That led them into overthrowing the government with good intention. They are revolutionaries. They are not even they are not even people who really there for their personal interest. To confirm that, the Babangida wrote a book. I started in the book, if you can find it. Then he wrote a book and confirmed that the January coup was not an Igbo coup. Not the Igbo coup, because it was a nationalistic revolution that was designed to right the wrong, to put the West in check. And as soon as that happened, the West there was peace. In fact, the Badon Street that was deserted all the time for fear of being caught by people on the broad daylight became flooded and people were rejoicing. That was another way, that we discussed in full somewhere. So then because of the crisis they went after the July coup, crisis was everywhere. So it was in July coup that we have just a popular announcement by Yakubu Gowon on August 1. August 1, just like 2 days after, 2 or 3 days after July coup, where he said the basis of Nigeria does not exist. What can explain that? Because if you put all the West, people West, when you talk about Ahmad Bello, you talk about Tafa Belowa, you talk about Gowon, all of them didn't believe that the one Nigeria would be is feasible as it is. So that thing was the problem, when the Aburi failed, then the hope of everything failed. So the idea was that Britain, for example, will become a very good advisor, because Britain was the one that told them not to break, because they wanted to break in August 1, 1966, when they declared Araba. Araba means secession. They wanted to break. But the High Commission, the British High Commission in Lagos, Kumi, is discussed plainly in the book, wanted them to ask them, what do you want to do? They said, I want to break away and just leave. And they said, you guys must be kidding. If you break away, that would be economic disaster. So after explaining that, and then he was able to convince them, and Kumi said he wrote a letter to Sultan and all the emirs and all the political and religious leaders, and convince them that they are going to make a mistake they will regret, and that they should retract and be in Nigeria, because they have, if they open the economics, the book of expenses, find that the North cannot even fund itself, large as it is. Most of the things, they're always in deficit economically. But the South was the money they got, the surplus from the South they used to finance the North. So we look at all those things culminate into the details in the book, and maybe when you read that, you understand it, because this is really a hearsay. Everything said in the book it has somebody who said it, and is verifiable. So those are the things that culminated and led into the crisis, and which indirectly the 1914, the mistake of 1914 became the major force that led all those things, and no correction is made so far.
So perfect. This brings us to the first break So thank you so much, Professor Alex. Thank you so much, Dr. Ohanaja. Again, details on getting your hands on a copy of the book is in the chat. So while we're doing a 5-minute break, just to allow our host and our author to take some time, I want to also let you all know that there are some door prizes. So for everybody that's on the call right now, if you put 1914 in the chat, then we'll randomly pull your information, and then you'll get a $50 digital gift card to Amazon. So again, the code or the number or the name is 1914. So if you put that in the chat, then towards the end of it, we'll do a random pulling, and we'll display that on on the screen. So as you can see, I don't do this for a living, so I'm a novice at this, but again, we're super excited that you're here. We're super excited that you joined us for this conversation. We're super excited for this book that is available today. And as I mentioned earlier, the details on how to get your hands on a copy of this book is listed in the chat. So we'll take a couple more minutes. I don't know if Dr. Ohanaja wanted to say something or so, or.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, restroom break or whatever break that.
Okay. So yeah. So and this is for you, a break for you guys as well. So I have the time at 2:54. So we'll start up again. We'll just make it 3 o'clock on the dot. All right. So like I said, put 1914 in the chat, and then we'll make sure that towards the end, we'll do one of those spin wheel things. We'll use your ID, your Google name as your ticket, if you will. All right. Thank you.
So that will be at 3 o'clock, right?
Yeah, we'll come back at 3 o'clock. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
So and just so that people know that we have a program, I'll stay behind. I'll try to tell some jokes. They probably may be terrible, or we'll see. But so in our culture, we know we have a lot of friends by the name Tony, and I was talking to one of them, and he said, Emeka, never say my name backwards. And I said, why not? Okay, that was a terrible one. So why not is Tony backwards. So like I said, I don't get paid for any of this stuff. As you can clearly see, I'm not good at telling jokes, but again, look, I'm super excited for this. This is an amazing book. There's been an incredible amount of work that went into creating this book. So if you haven't already checked the details in the link, definitely look at it. It's worth grabbing a copy of it. All right, I'll tell another one, and if it bombs again, then that'll be it. So. So it just occurred to me that I've been talking and I've been on mute this entire time. So I'm not sure if
What is he doing?
Mananyi were mborogunala, but we are rich. Shwainaka, umonekwe, naibu itinslaka, naibu ironekwe. Boha, embarman, ahorunike, no mumi, no ma. Anina bia, aniga zoputa, ozurezu. Wahuru n'ike n'omume n'ome ne ọha mabe mabe anyị na-abịa anyị ga-azọpụta o zuru ezu o zuru ezu mbaba anyị na-azọpụta ụwa ga-edozi.
Оглянись вокруг, посмотри в глаза. Там сияет свет, что нельзя писать. Каждый добрый жест, каждый тихий звук — это нежность рук, это верный друг. Ты не замечал в суете дорог, как любви поток перешел порог. Мир поет тебе, ловит каждый вздох. Ты в лучах тепла вовсе не одинок. Чувствуй этот ритм, чувствуй этот пульс. Я к твоей душе тихо прикоснусь, слышишь? Посмотри, какую любовь тебе дарят, как сердца вокруг для тебя горят. В каждом слове да, в каждом взгляде верю. Открываются все закрытые двери. Это твой прилив, это твой рассвет. Ничего важнее в этом мире нет. Просто принимай, просто расцветай. Это твой земной уютный рай. Кто-то принесет утренний покой, кто-то разделит твой путь непростой. Сотни мелких брызг в океане чувств исцеляют боль, прогоняют грусть. Ты магнит для тех, кто несет добро. В сердце серебро, в мыслях серебро. Пусть афроритм кружит над землей. Вся эта любовь навсегда с тобой. Не ищи причин, не ищи преград этой чистоте. Каждый в мире рад. Просто обернись, просто улыбнись. В этом танце чувств выше поднимись. Посмотри, какую любовь тебе дарят, как сердца вокруг для тебя горят. В каждом слове да, в каждом взгляде верю. Открываются все закрытые двери. Это твой прилив, это твой рассвет. Ничего важнее в этом мире нет. Просто принимай, просто расцветай. Это твой земной уют. He knows
Okay.
who I was.
Thank you guys again. So we're super, like I said earlier, we're super excited that you're here. We're going to continue with a few more minutes of questions, and then we'll take some questions from the audience as well. So with that said, I'll turn that over to Dr. Hanaja to continue the discussion.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for welcome back, really. During that short interval, someone approached me and said, how did the Igbos become victims in a situation that took place in Western Nigeria and ended up in a military coup that actually the Igbos suffered the greatest, had the sacred sacrifice. So on the most controversial and important argument in the book is your rejection of the idea that the January 15 coup was fundamentally an Igbo coup. That was the narrative. So that claim has actually shaped the conversation, the popular memory in decades. And I don't know what is definitely going to actually dissuade people from believing that. So let me ask you directly though, why do you challenge that interpretation so strongly? And what do you think has been lost or deliberately obscured by framing the coup primarily as an ethnic conspiracy?
Well, thank you very much, because I'm glad that you recognize this as a very important aspect of Nigerian project. The fact that it was classified, some critics call it a Igbo coup, was just like give a dog a bad name and kill it. So, and again, that false narrative had been rebuked by a number of people who are not Igbos. In the writing of the president, President Babangida in his writing said the January 15 coup was not an Igbo coup, because it was it's a coup of some patriotic Nigerian who wanted to right the wrong, who wanted to straighten up the problem we have in the West. It angered them, and they just wanted to take up the troublemakers. But then one WO2, one chief, one officer too, and a Ghana man served in the Nigerian army, also they said it wasn't an Igbo coup. It was designed to give the false narrative, and they create a lot of problem, which would help to make Igbos look so bad, to enable them to have a massive attack on them and reduce the population, and also deny them the access to political power. And it is the very important aspect of a discussion, because that was a means of painting Igbos black and making them feel that they are dominating, they are so ambitious. But if you look at the who constituted that January 15 coup, you find that so many Yorubas are there, so many Hausas are there, so many Fulanis are there, so many people from Robo and other areas were there. The only thing is that the person who is the head is an Igbo man. And that does not even mean that that is an Igbo coup, because if you look at it, can you say the coup that was carried out by Buhari in 1984 was a Fulani coup? Or the one with Babangida, with Ramat Mohammed that killed Agu Iransi, was it a Fulani coup? Babangida himself in coup, carried a coup, was it a Nupe coup? So most of all those things that they give all those names just to make things look bad. Good enough, it has been exonerated now because they found that it's not true. So that is why that becomes a very big thing, because that is the thing that makes so many people, when they plan all those things and present it to people, they feel that yes, Igbos are very intolerable, that this and that. It is a question of jealousy. And again, they are taking advantage of Igbo policy, because Igbos can find a place. They are very adventurous. They are very adventurous. They have to enter every part of this and they do their own business. People don't even care for the president. What they need is just an equal playing field where they create a very serene environment where they can move freely, and because they can survive in any situation. So the idea was that to make Igbos look bad, and at the same time, good enough, the truth will just come out, because no matter how far you hide the truth, it will rear its head up after a long time. The truth will always be there. So that is one of the things this book is just emphasizing, because the coup itself was a patriotic revolution designed for the benefit of Nigeria. But the July coup was a tribalistic genocide designed to eliminate a certain group of people and make them look bad. And you can understand why the war was fought. Nigeria, the Biafra was on battle. Biafra is just the people and the people in the south. Then fighting the whole population of Nigeria, plus Britain, plus Russia, plus 50 Islamic countries. But they stood their ground, manufactured their own weapons, feed themselves until they use hunger. Because so those are the things, that you can look and explore in this book, because this book carries the wealth of those information, which so many people are not hiding. There's so many people are hiding, really. They don't want to make this thing known, but the truth is out now. I thank you for that.
Now, your answer is particularly very revealing, and it comes in line with the narrative which you have so eloquently painted: Western regional collapse, election fraud, national dissolution and disillusionment, military frustration with civilian breakdown leading to the coup. It also emphasizes the presence of non-Igbo officers, among the plotters, and argues that the later ethnic interpretation was weaponized through propaganda, helping to justify revenge killings and the massacres that followed. So this is particularly very relevant now with your book, Propaganda. There is a saying that if you cannot tell your own story, if you abandon telling your own story, somebody will tell the story for you.
That's true. That's true.
Now, whatever you find out will not be actually what the story is all about. So I want to, in that sense, commend you for being part of setting the record straight, really. And if most Igbos would actually jump into that same trail, eventually the story will vindicate the fact, really, that there were other issues beyond what is happening. Do you have any short reaction to that?
Yeah, I do. The question is, why do I write the book? Anybody the people who really fought the war, most of them are gone. And if you live without leaving a legacy, without giving any documentation, giving account of your stewardship, nobody will do that. Okay? Take, for example, in the book I've read, the second book now that is on, it talks about how the war was fought. All the books I wrote, that I read about military officers, about this Obasanjo, the President Obasanjo, Babangida, Alabi Sama, all of them. Nobody ever mentioned the invention that Biafra made, which the world has even recognized, because they don't want to anything that's going to create credit to Nigeria. What is holding this issue today? That if these people could do this without, when the in a situation where there was nobody. And they were able to manufacture bullet, this rocket, manufacture bullet, manufacture so many things. They refine their own oil. Every department, every military formation has its own refinery. And they begin to ask themselves, why is it that Nigeria that has mineral, that has fuel, oil, and that is about 5th or 6th or 7th in the world production, can't even maintain a refinery where the Biafrans, under the stress, were able to refine and use that for their department. Every battalion had their own refinery and they refine the oil for their vehicle. Why can't they do that? So we have to write all those things because you really don't know. Because once you have that, if you don't tell the story, even the enemy will not tell the story for you. And that is why writing this becomes very important. It may not even be something that many people will like, but it's still putting us in the record that those things are there and they are verifiable and we know about they sit on it. Many countries always develop based on what they learn under desperate conditions. But our own, we just forget about it. The Nigeria don't even care as long as it comes from the East. And that is the problem.
Thank you. Now we're moving forward, really, in order to cover some other major aspects of the book. Another one is on Cameroon and Bakassi. So it's a striking part of your book in your treatment of Western Cameroon referendum of 1961 and the later loss of Bakassi. I don't know whether it has any relationship with a referendum that is being tossed about in the present Nigeria. Some readers might think those are separate diplomatic and territorial questions, but you treat them as deeply connected to the internal imbalance of Nigeria itself. So why do the Western Cameroon referendum and Bakassi reveal about the deeper structural weakness of the Nigerian state?
Thank you very much again. This is something, because most of all those things we're talking is things that I witnessed myself. By that referendum, I finished elementary school, I was in secondary school, 1961. Okay? So the Bakassi and the West Cameroon are victims of Nigerian structural defect, impact, power play of East, West, North. The British people just painted us as people who are very recalcitrant, very, very audacious, people who can't take yes for an answer, or no for an answer, people who cannot even accept, say yes, sir, for anything they say, because we were not under a central government. We are in a place that everybody will have a say in a discussion that affects him. So because of that, the British felt that we are not even very obedient to them, so they begin to paint the Igbos in such a way that, because that led into so many things, including moving the first oil, the first mineral oil found in Nigeria was in Owerri. So it was in Owerri, it was above. So, and then, but they move all those things now to Lagos. Everything, the oil is everything in Lagos, because just to deny the Igbos the asset, the sort of royalty they're supposed to have. Okay, so what they did again is that
that is what Britain did, really. Because it's centered on Britain and the evil rule.
So the British people just painted us so bad to the point that, yes, make it in such a way that anything we do looks so bad. So anything type of thing that they believe that Igbos are very, very disobedient. They are not even listening. So they only rewarded those people who were answering yes, yes in everything to do.
Yeah, yes. Throughout your book, as a matter of emphasis, Britain appears not as a neutral departing colonial power, but as an active engineer of a deeply unequal post-colonial management, I would say. So let's put it a little differently. What, in your view, was Britain really trying to achieve in creating Nigeria, and for which that seed they planted, because of, if you describe that as a selfish purpose, that seed has germinated into what we now have in the present Nigeria? Was this a nation building project, or mainly an imperial convenience structured around physical and strategic interests, really? Because it is a selfish purpose. So can you actually characterize Britain in this case?
Britain, I think when I was reviewing, when my wife was reviewing this, I think it gave me an idea based on it looked like, instead of saying the mistake of 1914, it could have been the deliberate mistake of 1914, because Britain knew for sure that these people who are incompatible, putting them together will be a time bomb. And it will explode, because this can never agree in anything. So Britain did this thing and remote control Nigeria, just like any other colonial thing. They create a problem. Can you believe that when you want to run for any position, you have to go to Wharton Hall, or what they call it, for endorsement? And the economy of Nigeria controlled by Britain. So they're always trying to sit somebody who will be yes, yes for them. And Igbo man should be the last person to do that. So the war itself, if you the textbook that come up, you can read the war that Britain financed the war with USSR, that time with Russia now, with more than 50 Islamic countries, plus the whole weight of Nigeria. You see how magnitude this thing is, and facing a very small people, and those people who are fighting and giving the restlessness. If you ask Peter Salusi of a damn person who fought in Nigerian army till the same time, said that the Biafrans were very rough. They gave them restless time, and they were so strong. And that they did it in such a way that all of them got frustrated, and they could have even declared run back if it was a fortune for them that made them end the war before they ended it themselves. So Britain had been in the country, because up to today, Britain decides whatever happens in Nigeria. Who is going to rule? And then, because of, if you take up the resources Britain received from Nigeria, Britain will collapse. Because Britain depends on the Nigerian, because if they share BP, they drills 100 barrels of oil, they say it's 10. And nobody verifies. If anybody wants to, they'll tip him. So most of all those things are the thing. Britain is the instrumental to those things. And until a leader tells Britain, no, we are not depending on you anymore, it will continue like that. And that was why Britain hate Igbos too much. And they don't want to deal with them, because they know they cannot tolerate all those excesses of the British people in terms of economy, in terms of everything. And that's why they fought so hard to take to Nigeria, take to the Yorubas, take to the Fulani, because those who can say, oh, what do you want? Take. and give me whatever remains.
The interest of those who are joining us late, the book is Nigeria, The Mistake of 1914 by Professor Alex Ayikam. We are interrogating the book, and it has a whole lot more than what we are even talking about. Trends in the Nigeria-Biafra War, the concept of one Nigeria and why it makes sense or it doesn't make sense. The Western Cameroon referendum of 61, why and those who believe in one Nigeria, the Western region crisis, the antecedents really that preempt exactly the present day Nigeria.
Let me comment a little bit because my trend of thought for Western Cameroon, okay, and Bokassi. Western Cameroon was a victim of Nigerian regional problem. The motive between Britain and the rest of, for example, the North was that the North was just the baby of Britain. You know, Britain Papa State because there's so many, they don't even challenge anything and they don't have anything, they can give up whatever is the South. So the Western Cameroon election, the election of federal election in 1959 succeeded. In that case, Cameroon had a seat in the Eastern House. And the NCSC was the leading political power. They had, so because of to reduce it, to depopulate Eastern region that time, they had a referendum to decide whether Western Cameroon will go back to the Eastern Cameroon or still remain in Nigeria. Because Western Cameroon was given to Nigeria during the First World War, when they defeated Germany. So the Cameroon, they had that election and then had a plebiscite in 1961. The plebiscite was just Nigeria, they lost Cameroon because the North, the West, and the Britain were in support of making sure that the Cameroon did not, Cameroonian did not even stay in Nigeria. They wanted them to move to Cameroon because they reduced the number of the Easterners in the Federal House of Assembly. For the Northern Cameroon, which was Sadwana province, okay, now Adamawa. So they favored stay in Nigeria. They did everything and rigged it and make sure that it's in Nigeria. That is the Adamawa and the Taraba state of today. Okay, so that was a craft which was designed for Nigeria to lose. Nigeria that in the south and the gain in the west. So the north gained more population, the east lost more population. Okay, that's about that. Then the Bakassi issue was also a victim of Nigerian Biafra War. Okay, Bakassi was a part of Nigeria that has a common boundary with Cameroon. Very rich in oil and minerals. But when the war broke out, the Biafrans were using the Bakassi to get in touch with the outside world. Okay, what happened? The details will be in the book. So Bakassi himself, Yakubu just found out this and then called Amadu Ahijo, who was the president of Cameroon that time, that he should block that, block the road. We have from Pitch to Biafra enter this and go contact the world. And then I think I told him, I don't know the boundary. He said, go ahead, whatever you think is the boundary, go ahead and block it. Afterwards, the world will talk. Guess what? The man who said he didn't go the boundary went and took a very big chunk of land and put to the military. At the end of the war, the man came, Yakubu came, wanted to let us go ahead and review that. He said, the deed is done already. We're not going to do anything. So during the Obasanjo period, Nigeria wanted to march, let's go ahead and threaten them. That was after the war. Let's go ahead and march them, do this and that. They went there, they made this small skirmishes. They went into the World Court. The World Court kicked them out. The details in the book. And that's how we lost Bokassi. Okay? That is the victim of the poor structure of government and institution as a result of 1914. Well, 1914 created a sort of hostility between the North and the South. And then Britain have that, okay, to make sure that that hostility continues till this time. I'm sorry, I wanted to say that, but just
Yeah.
that's that.
So, oh, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
I think this is a good time. There are a lot of good questions that are coming in from the audience. So I'm going to ask a couple of these questions, and then that'll probably bring us closer to the end of this program. But before we do that, I'll also turn it back over to Dr. Ohanaja for any last questions or any closing remarks, and then you, Professor Alex, as well. So let's see. The first question we have is from, let me pull this up, is we have from D. Walker 4209. If a nation formed without the consent of its people struggles with legitimacy, what responsibility does the present generation have? The second part of that question is, do they settle or carry a responsibility to redefine its future? So it's a long question. I'll read it again. I'll probably see if I could put it in there just so you have it in front of you. But the question is, if a nation formed without the consent of its people struggles with legitimacy, what responsibility does the present generation have?
Well, the world as we see is full of intrigues. If a nation, if a group of people feel they are oppressed and they want to change, they want to break away from there, there are two things they can do. If they have a backing, a superpower backing that backs them, they can through that place and declare their independence. And those who will support them. It happens in so many countries. If they don't have any backing, just like Biafra had, and they are pushed to the wall, and they are left either to get you slaughtered by raising your hands, or you fight until you give up. At least you have to challenge it. If you challenge it, there are two things that it is obvious, possibly obvious that you could lose. Or a humanitarian, somebody who really feel that you have a legitimate cause, can even come and help you out. Or if you fight to the point that you see that, oh, this person I thought is so weak, that is so strong, let us settle. They can settle. So that is a way I look at it.
Yeah. We have another question that comes in from Tiny Tryhard 1234. The question is, how can anyone practically deconstruct these ill preconceptions so that our kids don't repeat them?
Well, that is a good question, because that question had been eluding, the answer had been eluding so many people, that is why we said, let us sit down together and negotiate, because Nigeria never negotiated even that 914 amalgamation. People were not consulted, people were not taking part of it, even people did not even know what was the document. Nobody signed it. They didn't even read and understand it. So if Nigeria come together and discuss and admit really what is admit the conditions under which they're going to together, things will get all right. But you cannot get all right when you have some people who are really bent on believing that they can use force and destroy people because of religious practice, because of political practice, and the politics of people who really know what is wrong and they followed it because it's wrong. Those people are not human beings, they're not patriots. Or the legitimate, the law enforcement. The judiciary is just the last defense for a common man. If they cannot even make a ruling that is favorable and begins to have injustice, and peace cannot thrive under injustice. Okay.
And let me add to that viewpoint in a sense. Again, it goes back to that adage, really. If you do not tell your story, other people will manufacture the story for you, and you live with the consequences of that. That's what the responsibility for our generation. You must tell the story. Or any one of us left after the debacle, we must continue to tell the story, as Professor Alex has actually been doing.
Thank you. It looks like that's all the questions from the chat. So again, I just want to remind you that the details to get a copy of this book is listed in the chat. So definitely do what you can to grab your hands on this. I'm going to turn it over for the, so I'm not in Dr. Ahanaja's head, so I don't know if we have any more questions, but I'll turn it over to him for, this is pretty much like near the end of the program. So
yes, yes. As a matter of fact, we want to actually end in some graphic way that makes a lot of impact. Nigeria's troubles are merely the product of bad leaders appearing from time to time. It's articulated in the book. And the book's central corrective is that the crisis is structural by this definition. A defective foundation, an imposed union, unequal power relations, and a long refusal to tell the truth about those realities. So leadership matters, really, is essential, and is part of what that other person asked the question. But leadership has operated inside a framework already loaded with contradictions. And so the last question, before our closing remark for the prof, is this: what should the audience rethink after listening to you, after learning about Nigeria, the mistake of 1914? For many in this room, and many beyond this room, Nigeria is often spoken of as a given, a state whose unity must simply be assumed, defended, and never fundamentally questioned. But your book challenges the assumption at every level. So for my final question is this: what is the one major rethinking you must want your readers and your listeners and the Nigerians generally to carry away after reading Nigeria, the mistake of 1914? And that will bring us to the closing remark that will be made.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Anything that happens to us in terms of good governance, bad governance, indirectly is the fault of the electorate. Because the electorate select people who misguide, misdirect, mislead the populace. But at the same time, any person who wants to be a leader must understand what leadership is about. Leadership is service. Is not lauding anything to anybody. So we should always be very careful whom we elect to a position. Because there are so many people who really don't even care whom they elect. They always found the reward. The reward of 500 naira is enough for you to go and sell this. And this guy, call it an investment. If he give you $500 and then you give him the card and he can do whatever he wants to do. But if you do it for free based on his record, based on his antecedent, then the idea is that if you don't do very well, you are not going again. We are not going to vote for you. And if everybody said they won't go vote for you, that is it. But we have corrupt people who really stuff the ballot, chase people out, carry the ballot and stuff it and do. Then these people, is the population that are going to say enough is enough. Because without that, and we are going to look something like for any community to thrive, it must have a peaceful, it must always face peace in the sense that justice cannot, there can be justice without peace. And there can be peace without justice.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it from the horse's mouth, as the saying goes. The book is Nigeria, The Mistake of 1914. The Honorable Prof himself, Uchenna Nemeka, my honorable audience, ladies and gentlemen, what this book offers is not merely a historical narrative, but a challenge to national orthodoxy, really, as a matter of fact. Whether one agrees with every conclusion or not, or any statement relating to the Nigeria, the mistake of 1914, it forces us to confirm fundamental questions. And those questions are those we are going to grapple with forever and ever. What makes a nation legitimate? What are those things? Can unity survive without justice? That's $1 million question. Can memory be suppressed without consequence? And can a state built on unresolved contradictions remain stable simply by insisting on its own permanence? What is it? Please join me. And unfortunately, there are more details in the book, even in terms of the present crisis we are facing. But please join me in thanking the Prof. Alex himself for a serious and necessary intervention by putting his own 10 cents into publishing a book, which is the expectation, which is what we want. May God guide you all. May your days be long. May God's kindness directly rule and guide us today, tomorrow, and all the rest of our life. In Jesus' mighty name we ask.
Thank you. Amen.
Well, that concludes the this book launch. I want to thank again Dr. Hanaja for an amazing and engaging conversation. Professor Alex Anyakam for just his great work And I want to just remind everyone that the details are in the link or in the comment section as it relates to getting a copy of the book. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your attention. And I wish you all a good afternoon.
Thank you very much. The issue here is that I thank all of you for paying attention to this and look at it and see that you make something out of it. I read other books and read this and then, because if you don't read the book, if you don't read what's the book, you find that people can give you any kind of information that is very inaccurate, that is tailored to fit them. So, but this book is just designed for you because this is the information I have. Most cases I have been the eyewitness of that. And so many people anything people can write now could be a third party that when they say somebody says, but this is exactly the difference is just an eyewitness account. And thank you very much for giving me that honor of paying attention to whatever I have articulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nemeka. Thank you, Uchenna. Thank you, everybody.
With that, feel free to disconnect. Thank you all again for your attention. And if you haven't had a chance to get a copy of the link to grab yourself a copy of this book, it's also copied in the, it's pinned and is also copied in the comment section. All right. Thank you all. God bless.
Thank you.
All right.
Wasn't whom he has made me to be.
Cool.
He knows where I'm.
Abangi binobi Nyemda firo kozini Jata odora bonku Eni ineluma Palioya ine beguni kuku Nagaya ne bochichiri Abangi gwenobia Jenga fero ke osimiri Ncheta obodo akpọnku Ebi n'elu mma ha Oh, Pauliona